Thanks to everyone for attending today. I will briefly, so I'm Chris Turpin. I'm the Chief Enterprise Architect for the Department of Health and Human Services here in the state of North Carolina. My background originally started in security. I have my CISSP, a couple other certifications. I'm AWS certified as an architect. I had the chance to move over to enterprise architecture several years ago and build up our office here in DHHS, and it has been a very interesting and fun ride. To give you a little insight to DHHS, for those of you who don't know, prior to me showing the few slides I have, we are one of the largest state agencies. We have about 16,000 employees, 32 divisions and offices. It's about an $18.7 billion operating budget. And we do so many things in North Carolina, it is unreal. I've never seen an agency like ours that is diverse. The polite way to put it is it's highly matrixed. We have everything from public health to like nuclear regulatory compliance. We investigate elder abuse and things such as that. I mean, we have purview over EMS, number of things in the state of North Carolina. More than likely, if you live in the state of North Carolina, your data is in one of our systems, which kind of brings me back around to when Ron and I were talking. One of the things we talked about is from a architecture perspective, much like I did when I was with security. Everything's about data. I mean, if we didn't have data, there would be nothing for us to protect or do. I mean, everything we do is based on data. So when the pandemic hit, what ended up happening was so we had all this disparate data, and it became part of us to work with our chief data officer's data office to figure out how we're going to make all of this disparate data come together in a manner that best benefits the citizens of North Carolina and other folks. And so kind of with that, this is very at a high level. I don't want to go into all the super boring stuff that can come sometimes with enterprise architecture. So to really sum up how I view what enterprise architecture's role was during the pandemic was to educate folks on technology, because it is our job as the business and other folks come forth and say, I have this problem. And we have to very rapidly come up with solutions. It's for us to know that technology and explain it to folks and help them find technology that empowers their business rather than the business and the people that service the citizens of North Carolina having to figure out that for themselves. The other part is provide technical consulting or tactical. Sorry, we are there to not just be a strategic portion of DHHS where we do advise on strategy and things for the department at enterprise level. It is also to have people that can certainly do the deep dive and work with the teams and really help them implement solutions as needed. Another piece to that is to inspire innovation. And I say inspire rather than, often you'll sometimes hear folks talk about driving innovation. And to me, when you start talking about driving innovation, it is more of a forced path or a forced march, whereas inspiring is that we are wanting people to come up with their own innovative ideas as part of the work that they do, which plays right into number 4, and that is cultivating magic. And so some folks are going to say, if you've ever read like Lee Cockrell's book, Making Magic, this is certainly inspired by that. Many of the great ideas that came from the Walt Disney World Company and things were born from the folks that actually did those jobs and did not come from an executive level. They grew from the ground up, and the same ideas here with EA. Our goal is to talk to folks and help them, and as we go through projects and work through things, they say, well, what if we could do something like this? And then that's where we have these conversations about, well, what if I told you this is possible? And these things are possible in this way, and here's the type of technology, and here's how we can do it. And it's to cultivate that idea of magic, and it all works to inspire innovation and get everybody excited about technology. And it eases that path of where the business can serve the citizens and the folks that they need to without having to worry that IT is not trying to drive the way. We're all on the same journey together, and that's really what technology to me and EA is. It's a journey. There's a number of different ways we can get to our destination. We just have to pick which one we want to take. Which leads me to I'm going to talk about one case study. If we have some time, I can transition over to another one. The predominant one that I'll talk about initially is, so back in the fall of 2019, myself and Babita Savitsky, who is our enterprise data architect that I hired, we started to have conversations about how we can bring data from disparate systems and everything together in DHHS for analytical purposes to empower businesses to make better decisions. Even organizations like public health, they have like well water quality, and then they have like WIC for women, infant, and children's. They have electronic death, or they have death and birth, epidemiology. There's this number of things, but still, even within those pockets, all of that data is siloed. And some parts of DPH didn't even know what other parts had. And it's that way across all of our divisions and offices. There's plenty of areas where certain divisions and offices would have data that could be very vital to other divisions and offices. And it was sometimes easy for us to see because we set at such a high level. It was not readily known to other areas of DHHS. So we started to have these conversations, and we said this could be a good opportunity to create like a data lake for DHHS. Bring whoever wanted to bring data into it can bring data into it, and as we grow and cultivate that data, we make sure that we're only taking good, pertinent data, and then through proper vetting processes, people can have access to it and make decisions. Well, that was all fine and good. We're having those great conversations, and then of course the pandemic hits. And as part of that, as we started to talk about COVID and what this means and what systems have pertinent data, like epidemiology systems. And then it started to come to, yep, COVID's becoming even more real. And then March 11th is the day I remember that I sent my team home and said, hey, we're all remote for the foreseeable future due to COVID. And then come March 24th, there was a meeting where folks are standing around saying, hey, we have these 5 systems that all play into COVID, and the governor wants dashboards to start reporting on, infection rates in North Carolina and all this other type of data. What can we do? And my boss, who was the CTO, essentially said at the time, well, we've been kicking around this idea of a data lake. And I mean, it was just amazing. They said, okay, how fast can you do it? And what ended up happening was we had already had some additional talk or some beginning talks with Amazon on it, and we ended up doing a quick proof of concept, and my team doing some amazing work with the folks at AWS. Within 48 hours, we had our minimum viable product stood up. And from that point, we started ingesting data from about 3 or 4 different systems, tracking like hospital beds and things like that. And so if you live in North Carolina and you've ever seen the COVID dashboards that are on the websites, and even some of the other statistical websites that have pulled data from the state of North Carolina, all of the majority of those are driven by our business intelligence data platform that my team rapidly developed, and it has only continued to expand. We added Dell Boomi, which is an integration engine. We added that into the mix. We've been adding some additional, our backend is Tableau for analytics purposes. We're working on adding SAS into that. And so really, that's a perfect example of what EA could bring to the table during a pandemic from that standpoint. And this was done, and I will say, one of the things that's really important to note here too is, I keep saying EA, but it was not EA alone. It was very much a cross-functional team. The entire time we were holding hands with security, and we had those folks engaged in it. We had infrastructure engaged, and while the architect team took the first work with the folks from AWS to build the minimum viable product, it was really built by DHHS in totality, and it was amazing how it came together. And then from that, it has only grown in the fact that folks at DHHS have seen the dashboards and say, hey, how can we have things like this? And what if I could look at, there's opportunities. Could I see data in these formats if I did these types of things with our projects? How can I get it? How can I be a part of this and see this? And so it has simply continued to grow from that standpoint. So what I will go from there is also what our team has done, and I don't have a slide for this. This is just me talking about an additional case study. Is we came into a problem where as we start to work through COVID vaccinations, how are we going to take data from some organizations that do mass vaccination clinics where there's not going to be access to electronic health records? And this is certainly pertinent because I know we're going to have someone from UiPath talking. Well, we actually partnered or got UiPath, and they are doing with our enterprise architecture team and UiPath, we have a robotic process automation project that went underway to actually take those manual health records that are coming through as part of those vaccinations and doing that repetitive manual process to load them over into our vaccination software. And that came about from a conversation with EA, and we were talking about what could happen. And our chief operating officer was going around with some different ideas and things like that. And we're like, hey, this is all possible. And all of a sudden, we started talking, and UiPath's name got brought up. And so stuff really kind of came together organically, which is what's very much amazing about it. The EA team has worked on a number of vaccination projects. We helped build the Slow COVID NC, which was a partnership with Google. And so my point in all of this is that there's so many different ways to do so many different things. And the big thing that links all of this stuff together, because when we did the vaccination project with Google, is it became pertinent that we had to get data from our vaccination system over into our contact tracing solution. All of those things then still had to feed our business intelligence data platform in order to provide analytics to decision makers to make decisions on what our next tactical steps will be while keeping with an overarching strategic goal. And DHHS was mentioned in Bloomberg several weeks ago about our ability to vaccinate across groups in the state of North Carolina, and we have very small percentages in those groups between minorities and things like that on how we're getting vaccinations out to people. And I think some of that, if not, I would like to think that a lot of that is owed to the fact that we have good statistical data that the local counties and other organizations and everyone that makes all of this actually possible can make decisions and help drive where those vaccines need to go, because they can see where folks have been vaccinated and where stuff has been done. So it all ties back into data. And the important thing is here is, when you're architecting things, when we're securing things, when we're doing all of these things, it all starts with the data. And that's kind of one of our focuses, and I can talk about EA and things like that for a long period of time, but in EA, one of the big focuses that we've always done is data. And there's been a lot of great presenters that have talked about their capabilities to help you all with data and things like that and what has come out of the pandemic. And I believe a lot of things that we're going to learn, or that we have learned during the pandemic, and some of these functions that we've done will survive well beyond the pandemic, because they really are applicable across the board. One last quick use case I'll give you is there was a need when the pandemic first hit and everything was closing. We had first responders that had to get access to daycare. And we helped the department stand up and work with our Division of Child Development and Early Education, which oversees daycares, help them have a solution that would provide what daycares are open, so first responders and folks that had to go into work because of their responsibilities as part of COVID and their response to COVID, where they could send their children and they would be safe and there's a place to keep them. And that is pertinent beyond COVID. If we have a hurricane on our coast, it would be important. And I know I'm trying to be cautious on time, so I apologize for speaking a little fast. I'll show my one last slide here, which is I'm a dyed-in-the-wool geek that grew up in the mountains. And I typically don't read slides a lot, but as the first one said, these are some words to inspire and to think about, and they all relate to enterprise architecture. And a lot of the work that we all do in IT is that this is a cold, stark world, but to a polar bear's mother and cubs, it's paradise. And the important thing is to understand with that is when we look at systems that are aging and falling into technical debt and things like that, they may look terrible to those of us that have come to put a lens on them and try to figure out how to make them better. But to someone, it works. It has worked for years. It is a wonderful thing, and it's something they've cared and nurtured for, and we need to be understanding of that as we try to promote change and help and make them understand that they're part of this change. And this is their, it's like a kid. Their child has gone off to college, and we can leave that system be, and now they're on to their next adventure in life as part of that. The second one is, farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles away from the cornfield. And that is true EA very much, and a lot of branches of technology. make recommendations, and I have been guilty for it early in my career, and I try to be mindful of it now. It's easy to tell someone this is what needs to be done when we're not doing the work. And so that's where EA, in my opinion, has become, we're trying to implement more as a tactical consulting group so that folks understand that EA is there to do this with them. And it's the same thing with security and infrastructure and other things. When you're providing oversight and guidance to folks, do your best to remember that guidance and oversight, do it in a way you would tell someone if they were right on your team and doing that work with you, so that you understand the ask that's actually being asked. And the last part of that is all we can do now is wait and hope that you didn't make any mistakes. Welcome to the big leagues. And the point of that is I have a friend that always tells me all the time that hope is not a plan, and that's an age-old additive. And I think it's worn out. But the truth is hope is not a plan if there's nothing behind it. But if you have action and things like that, hope is more than a plan. It can be a strategy, and most good strategies have hope in it. And that's one thing to remember. And then for those folks that really like pop culture, it's Bears, Beats, and Battlestar Galactica. If you like The Office. And with that, I want to thank Ron again, and thank you all for the time that I've had here. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.